Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today. I know we had a very eventful week in terms of data and security. So we have invited special guests to, speak more about what happened and just to guide us as to what we need to do as end users, as persons who are using and entering our data day to day with different organizations, what we need to ask, what we need to do to ensure that we are secure. So, gentlemen, I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourselves, starting with Stephen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Wood. I'm a cybersecurity professional based out of Toronto. I've worked in the IT industry for over 18 years now, mostly in the financial services, some amount of public service as well, mining and higher education. That's it.
All right, great. Thanks, Stephen. And Dale?
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Dale Murray. I'm actually a Director of Engineering and Operations at Lunar Ops, which is a DevOps consulting company. We also focus on solutions within the cloud scape of things, security around that, automation, monitoring, and logging.
Okay, thanks, Dale. Shane.
Hi, I'm Oshane Bailey. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Osub, and I'm also basically the event organizer and one of the founders of Jamaican Developers Group. Both organization is about, building sustainable, scalable software solution and trying to digitize as much of the human processes, activities that we do every day, and just really solving these problems that we see on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you so much, Oshane. Michael.
Right, thanks, Colleen. Camille. Michael Kerr, I'm the CTO of Vertis Technology. Over 15 years experience in enterprise IT, and also a similar experience in the international space. Working with cloud environments since around about 2010, 2011, around enterprise architecture, cloud architecture, infrastructure architecture, and scaling and that sort of thing. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And my name is Camille Sterling, Chief Operations Officer of Vertis Technology and the moderator for today. All right, Oshane, just tell us what happened this week.
Well, many things happened, but of course, the highlight of the week was the data breach with the Jam COVID application that was built by the Amber Group, which was contracted by the government for them to build. So what really happened was they built it within 3 days. The app was there published, people using it, but there were some like data, well, quite a lot of data and files left open from like a S3 AWS server, and a lot of people are asking how comes this happened, why wasn't any checks done, and so forth. And it really happens 3 days you take to build a application. Just because you build something in 3 days don't mean that you shouldn't, do security checks, do maintenance, and so forth. You're building a prototype using rapid development, and then it seemed like nothing was done afterwards. 7 months gone, and TechCrunch posted it. They found a lot of data breach when it comes on to individual passport information, individual COVID response, and a lot of data. So right now we're in the state of watching what's going on with the data protection at GDPR and seeing how all of this will unfold, and not saying who's going to take the blame of such a big breach of individual confidential data. So that's basically what happened this week as the main highlight.
Oh, I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Yes, so thank you so much, Shane. Dale, do you think, does this undermine the cloud?
So I don't think it should. So in any solution that is actually deployed, whether it is with a small company or government in itself, there really should be some measures put in place, or just overall compliances and audit that is actually done to ensure that there's some security. And more specifically with the platform that was actually utilized for this application, which is AWS, there are native services there like AWS config that will actually allow you to, make sure that you don't drift out of compliance. So things like open buckets and access to the assets that were uploaded by individuals, which is termed as PII, which is your personal identifiable information. This would have been easily prevented by these kind of automated checks. Yeah. Oh, your mic.
Thank you so much, Dale. O'Shane, is 3 days enough to create an application like this?
3 days enough to do rapid prototyping to build an application like this, but the misconception that a lot of individuals tend to have, I guess, is it's easy to build something, but majority of the cost and time is based on the maintenance and dealing with the overall changes within environment, changes with user interaction, and so forth. So yeah, it's the building application was one thing, but after the prototype, the MVP, or the full app itself, of course, there needs to be some form of maintenance policy where it gets regular update, regular system scan, security scan, and just improving the overall software solution. So for example, let's say your glasses was an app. If I give you that glasses, there might be like some discomfort. There might be like the medicine might be too like strong for your eyes and power strong for another individual eyes. So it all goes back. You build the first version and then you iterate on top of that, do incremental development to just improve the system, ensure the system works for everyone, ensure data is protected, and just the system gets a lot of constant update. And considering that you're dealing with confidential data, security software testing is utmost of importance.
Yes, it is. Stephen, was this a breach?
Well, I think that is still, the gray area. No one really knows at this point in time. What I think I would call this, and to the term now, is a security misconfiguration. And Gartner has published information some years ago that says, up to the year 2025, 90% of cloud security breaches will be caused by customers. So I think, this is a perfect example that shows, so and just to kind of piggyback on O'Shane's point about application development, we have to get to this mindset to say that, security has to be by design. It has to be at the start of the project. It can be put on at the end as an afterthought, because one, that's where you have issues, and that's where it gets really expensive to implement. So we have to have a shift that, the shift left mentality has to start taking precedence in our development. And, we need to look at the policies, what was done, where was the due diligence, who vetted this application before it went live? Because it can be the developers, because that's a conflict of interest right there. So, if it's a breach, that will only be determined by the digital forensics or the incident response that they're gonna, that I would hope that they're currently undergoing. But then, if they didn't do a simple configuration change to not allow public access, can we really depend on them turning on logging on that bucket to see, what happened? So, is this just, the smoke and mirrors they're trying to give the public at this point to say, hey, we're doing this investigation, or is it just, okay, there's nothing we can do at this point?
Thank you so much, Stephen. Michael, on-premises would be safer, right? Do you agree?
That is not something I can agree with. And as Stephen mentioned earlier, is that it's a configuration issue. So whether the implementation or the deployment of the solution was on-premise or within a cloud environment, if it's misconfigured, it is misconfigured. If the due diligence and the planning weren't done, and the post-deployment assessment and testing to make sure that this solution is fit for purpose and it meet the relevant security requirements, then we would still be where we are today. So it is not a case of where the solution is hosted, but the implementation and the configuration. O'Shane mentioned 3 days for development and delivery, right? And being in enterprise architecture and IT for so long, and I've built so many critical infrastructure, it is not a development problem, it is not an application problem, it is an infrastructure problem. It is the element or the components that are hosting the solution that the misconfigurations were on. So I don't think enough time possibly would have been given to the architecture of the hosting platform, which may result in what we're seeing currently. And I would have traveled during the time of Jam COVID. I've used the Jam COVID app, so I am one of those victims as well. Of what has been transpired.
Yes, this is serious. Kurt, should cloud providers provide training, security training for these companies developing these applications?
Well, the thing is, right now, all 3 major providers actually do provide certified training within security and stuff, and that's AWS, which is from Amazon, Google with GCP, and Microsoft's Azure. So there are all certifications there, and even outside of that, yourself from CEH and other entities that provide certification. But even to take it a step further, just to expand on what Stephen and O'Shane had actually mentioned, as well as Michael, even if it does come down to a mishap of making assets publicly available when there shouldn't have been, one additional step that could have also been implemented was actually the encryption of the data. So even someone who was able to download the data, they need to decrypt it, which it would be a challenge for them to actually do. But going back to the question itself, I also think the onus is also on the government. I heard mention of there being Data Protection Act. I personally don't know where that is, or if there is even one in place. I don't know what what is going to happen as a result of it, and the possibilities of this happening. Where that investigation is and how much of it will be disclosed to the public as to what has happened, how it happened, and what we're going to do to prevent this from happening itself. Because this has really opened up the doors to other things that people have been hesitant to give government even more data through like the NIDS program, and then how we treat PII and health information as well. Like for example, in the United States, and actually interacting with any government systems for data or engaging the government itself, you have SOC 1, SOC 2, FedRAMP, HIPAA compliances. How it is that the developers themselves, if they actually interact with data, are they compliant? Are they aware of how to treat that data? Is that even done across the team itself? So even with the companies overall, there's an audit process that happens every 6 months. Training is done internally to make sure that everyone is compliant, so that when an external auditor actually comes in, they can actually see that level of compliance across the team that actually interact with these systems.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Dale. O'Shane, how can a developer help with cloud secure applications?
Okay, so finally, someone recommended me to tell a story like this. If you're going to develop a cloud app, always think about security in mind. Become more of a secured developer than just a programmer. And that is basically one. You should know the fundamentals. If you're building your own app, don't think just having HTTPS means that the website is secured. It only means that the website is encrypted. Things like this need to be implemented, like access control, logic and list, so you can know have permissions set up properly, have access control for user-based roles and so forth to set up properly, so no single user can access some form of data without proper permission. Another thing that could be implemented, and all of these, of course, are in frameworks and platform, but another thing that they could implement is even if it goes back to where breach happened, you can encrypt files as I think Dan, I'm not sure who pointed it out, but encrypt the files itself. They can also implement some form of tracking to know what the user is doing, and the flow of the user and so forth. Another thing that can be implemented from the platform base, for example, there's like Cloudflare, which is a free cloud security platform that tracks which the traffics from different area in the world. It blocks DDoS attack. Another thing is that it takes in consideration of something called XSS scripting, where people are trying to do SQL injection or trying to read the network traffic to find vulnerable data. So all of those, there are tools they can just implement. And also, once someone is making an input through a form and then submit it to the application, that data also need to be sanitized, because some may inject code and so forth. And all of these are basic knowledge that developers should have. But the question, of course, is it a basic knowledge that all developers actually have? And another thing that was pointed out earlier is configuration. Configuration is very important, because there are times there are web servers like Apache or Nginx that comes with a basic default configuration. You need to make that more secured. The default works for anything, and ports tend to be open, and a lot of default configuration may lead to security vulnerabilities. So therefore, always review the configuration of whichever web server, whichever platform, application, and so forth, to ensure that you have the best practice in place for those platform, application, and so forth. So user access control, configuration, and ensure that you have some form of cloud security, like Cloudflare backing your website traffic.
Okay. Thank you so much, O'Shane. Stephen, how common are these breaches?
Let me put it this way. We probably have a breach going on right now as we're talking about this. You know, breaches are common across, you know, every type of organization, small, medium, large. It doesn't matter. You know, just last year we had the Marriott Hotel Group that had a security breach of over 5.2 million hotel guests. You know, Twitter was breached last year with some specific accounts that they breached the accounts of the presidents, former presidents, Elon Musk, etc., and demanded Bitcoin. We had a big Equifax breach a couple of years ago. There's just these common breaches. You know, Yahoo has been breached, Target has been breached. So, you know, it's not just these small companies or small entities. These larger companies who have tremendous security budgets are breached as well. You know, so it's a problem that we have to take a look at. And just as O'Shane was saying, you know, security has to be the mindset. It has to be from the design stage, and that's the only way we're going to start reducing the number of these breaches. And the cloud adoption, you know, is taking off. I would say we're still in the earlier stages of cloud adoption, because most companies are still a lot on-prem, you know. So, and I think with the impact of COVID recently, a lot of companies have started to spin up workloads in the cloud without the thought of security behind it, just because they need to, you know, they need to get their employees access to data now who are now working from outside the perimeter networks of the company. So this is going to continue. It's not going to stop. It's going to get worse, I actually think. So we as defenders and as security professionals have to be, you know, constantly at it, constantly looking at things, and, you know, trying to be proactive, you know, because you know, just to simplify things, you know, the security professionals and IT professionals in general, we always have to get it right. You know, 100% of the times we have to get it right. The bad guys, the threat actors, only need to get it right once. You know, so the odds are already pinned against us, and
Yes.
you know, it's very profitable, you know, for these guys. They can stay a million miles away and reach out and touch you. You know, so, you know, we just have to implement security by the design, the defense in depth, principle of least privilege, and we have to look at proper securing our CI/CD pipelines, you know, performing vulnerability scanning, DevSecOps, all of that. So it has to be rolled into the process. We have to have a security mindset, and when I say we, I mean, you know, from the lowest level employees come all the way up. You know, security awareness and training has to be a part of every organization. No, it's not a luxury item, you know. So we need to look into these things and start from the bottom up, because a lot of these attacks are coming from phishing attempts, you know. Yes. So we have to start from the user perspective and make our way up, because we can implement all the technology in the world. You know, the weakest point in any organization is gonna be the user.
Yeah.
All the time, every time. So we have to look at security from a foundational principle, and we have to teach security, you know, and I'm not meaning, you know, high level, but, you know, just explain to persons, put things in a scenario where they can understand.
Be skeptical.
Exactly, you know. So it's a fight. So data breaches are going to happen, you know, big organizations, small organizations, it doesn't matter the size, and we have to implement proper due diligence as well. This is very important. So, you know, we talk about developers. Most developers don't really care about security, you know, their job is to develop, you know, and whether the app is secure or not, they have done their job, they've developed it. So that mindset has to change, you know. And it's actually easier to teach a developer security than to teach a security person development. So, you know, I think, you know, that is one of the biggest things we can do in terms of saying, hey, implement AppSec programs, you know. So we start with the developers. So if the product of their work is going to be secure from the onset, then it makes life a little bit easier. So,
yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Camille, just to to add to what Stephen just had actually mentioned. So even more recently with the even SolarWinds, they were actually compromised through what is called like a supply chain attack, and that actually gave access to pretty much everyone that SolarWinds actually provided services for, which including government, including a lot of the larger companies as well, right? So even when you're thinking about your most immediate internal tooling or anything, you also have to give some considerations to who you actually interact with as well. So say for example, I may not be able to compromise Stephen, but I know that Stephen and O'Shane has a relationship, and O'Shane is a weaker link. I'm going to attack O'Shane to get to Stephen. So that whole compliance and governance has to cover not just the entity in itself, but everyone who actually has to interact with that entity.
Yeah, you're as strong as your weakest link,
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in on this action. So I did some research back in the days about in 2018. Some of the findings that we got from reputable source, like there's a hacker attack every 39 seconds. There's 43% of hackers targeting small business, mainly because most small business tend to have their data somewhat disorganized and insecure and tend to think that no one will target them. But that's the thing. They will target small businesses because sometimes most of the time it's easier to get away with hacking smaller entities than larger. In 2018, there was an increase of 500% of large-scale DDoS attacks. So those are some research that we found back in 2018. We haven't done any security research since then, but it's nothing new. And as we immerse more into this digital age, it's going to get worse. And this is where security is important, but at the same time, there's some disconnect where there's development, testing, and secure. Each of those pipelines need to be aligned, mainly because testing is supposed to be a strong suit for both software security and development. You can automate the testing pipeline, which ties into vulnerability scans, load testing, and penetration testing, and any form of security testing. The software testing with a CI/CD pipeline can help with that. So software testing and security should go hand in hand, same for development.
Okay, so with applications now moving to the cloud, Stephen, can the cloud be secured?
Yeah. I think if we follow the foundational principles of information security, where we protect the three tenets, the confidentiality, integrity, availability, we have to form that as the basis of doing anything. But one key thing to note is that cloud security is a different model. It's a different mindset than on-prem security. And we have to remember that a lot of misconception with cloud is that a lot of customers go into these arrangements with these cloud service providers thinking that, okay, I'm paying them to provide me these services, I don't have to worry about security, right? But one of the key things is that the cloud is a shared responsibility model, right? Which meaning that the cloud service provider will protect up to this level, but then the customer has to protect the other level. And this is determined on the services that is consumed, whether it's an IaaS, a PaaS, or a SaaS service. That determines, how much who has to responsibility who has. So one, we can't use the same tactics and techniques to secure cloud as we do with on-prem, because by nature, it is publicly accessible. It's a public cloud, right? So one, we need persons that are trained in cloud security. That's one. We need proper due diligence. We need proper security principles and foundation. We need to utilize the cloud's native tools, because when you look at it, Amazon, Microsoft, Google Cloud, no one has the security budgets. No one company has the security budgets that these guys have. So when they invest and build these toolings on their own platform, no one is going to know it better than them in most cases, right? So we have to leverage these tools natively that are built to be secure, because these guys have their SOC compliances to meet, they have their PCI compliances to meet, all of these regulations and government. They don't just do this just because they want to, they have to. So we have to take advantages of these tools, and a part of it is knowledge. We don't have a lot of cloud security experts out there that understand this and know how to leverage them. Secondly, we have to utilize the CI. There are a lot of free resources, like the Center for Internet Security releases their benchmarks, which are hardening white papers that we can use to implement security baselines and harden these products that we consume from these cloud service providers. Those things are just basic things that we can do without costing a lot of money. So we have to look at defense in depth. We have to look at the principle of least privilege when we're assigning any access to anybody. Give them just the minimum what they need. Don't give somebody administrator when they just need to read the documents. That's something that we have seen from on-prem, and it has made its way in the cloud security model as well. So yes. These are the bad habits that IT professionals, over the years has taken and sent it all the way up to the cloud as well. So we can't expect a change in these things unless we change our mindset and our behavior. So yes, of course, the cloud can be secured, and I think the cloud is more secure than on-prem. These guys' data centers, you're not getting there. It's like a Fort Knox, So they are inherently more secure than any on-prem. So yes, I believe the cloud can be secure, and I believe the cloud is the future. And if you don't adopt it and learn how to protect it, then you'll just be left behind, and you're gonna be breached, and you're gonna be paying out ransom, and you're gonna lose your reputation as a business, and you're gonna lose your customers. Yeah. So the time is now, and we have to start limiting these things by just implementing basic principles.
Yeah, just to even elaborate even further, or even go further with that, because I know it does come into question, especially for Jamaica itself. What is the Data Protection Act, right? I mean, we utilize AWS, but is that compliant to storing Jamaica's data there? Data residency. Should that aspect of the application store that data within the island rather than in the cloud? What are the guidelines that we're going by to actually say this is what we should be doing, this is to what level, what is acceptable, and then who actually goes back and audit and make sure that this is actually what's being done?
Yes, this is very important. Michael, how should we approach, organizations approach deployment like these?
So I have been listening to the conversation very keenly, and we could talk about this from a technical perspective, like for days. However, there's a fundamental piece that is missing, which is the architecture, right? Which, if we look at building a house, right, you could be the best builder. You know how to lay blocks, similar to a developer. You can tie steel, and you can build a house, right? But if I give you a plot of land by the sea, without the proper architecture, without the proper design, without understanding all those principles that needs to be adhered to, then you'll build a house similar to you'll build it on a flat piece of land or rock. And that is exactly what happened in the jam COVID case, if we look at it, right? So if we're to pull the users from a jam COVID perspective, this is what I would term as a critical national piece of infrastructure. Given that we've got citizens from all over the globe, right, as potential users of this system, meaning that the system does not only need to adhere to the bill that's currently being drafted for data protection, but it needs to adhere to the GDPR. It needs to adhere to all the regulations that the United States has, SOC 2, SOC 1, HIPAA, etc., and all these relevant frameworks and compliances from a data perspective, right, globally, because this system will is hosting data for every single country. Think about it. Everyone that needs to come into Jamaica is considered a user, and it's their data, which and their governance framework is different, right? So the system from the design phase, which goes back to the 3 days, can you really put all of this together and build a security framework for a system of this nature to make sure that you're ticking all these compliance checkboxes, right? So from an architecture perspective, the developers are fine. The developers do what they're told to do. I don't expect a developer to be a security expert. I expect a developer to develop. And that is the reason why this forum, we've got Stephen from a security perspective, we've got Dale from a delivery perspective, and O'Shane as a developer, right? Because it needs these various skill sets to be involved to make sure that the solution is architected, developed, and deployed properly.
Securely.
Yes, and that is where the
Very
gap.
important, security.
If you realize we'll be talking about developing security, but the design aspect has been mentioned. Being involved in architecture for at least the past 8 years at an enterprise level, and I've built critical national infrastructure for tens of millions of users. We don't start putting code on anything without approvals from a security design perspective, an infrastructure design perspective. This thing is tested on paper first. You know, whether it's an agile development approach that's been taken, whereby the delivery is iterative, but we need to know from a security standpoint. Worse, when it is not just myself developing an application to share my photos, which I don't care about. We're talking about a critical national system.
Yeah. So, you know, you mentioned some very good points, and what I'm thinking about even now is where does this take us in terms of implementing something like NIDS? I mean, we can say that this is a blood on the government in terms of how it actually has secured personal information, and it has damaged that user confidence. You know, prior to this, we had no evidence that this could be possible. We were just talking it up and saying
this is a blessing in disguise.
You know, right? So now that we have evidence that this is possible, one slight misconfiguration, and all these records are available publicly, and then you're now asking me for biometric data to be stored. You know, how do you then regain that public confidence to actually move forward to enact something like NIDS later on?
Yeah, and just to add, you know, that is the thing that you can't put a figure on, you know, that trust, you know, that reputational trust, because who is going to want to give the Jamaican government that type of information now when you can't secure that, you know, or, you know, where that mistake was made. And that's really something that you really can't put a figure on it. You really don't know what to say to it, because that's reputational, and that lasts. You know, people will always remember that. You know, so that's key.
Yeah, this is very important. So I'm going to throw out this scenario to you. An organization is going to collect data, right? So now I am more for a regular user, person who is not technical, person who just use their gadgets every day, their phones. So that's the extent to their knowledge to technology, right? An organization is now collecting data, possibly similar to what happened here with Jam COVID. What is it that I should be looking for, that person should be looking for as a user, to be comfortable knowing that the information that I'm providing or that person is providing is going to be secure. I'm going to start with you, Stephen, and then I'll go to Dale, Michael, and O'Shane.
But one of the first questions, that I think a Jamaican would ask is, what you want it for? What you going to do with it? Why I need to tell you this? And these are the questions that you need to ask, because I think there has to be some sort of privacy impact assessment that has to be done before someone can even think about collecting any data from anybody. But as someone handing over the data, you have the right to ask these questions. How will my data be stored? How will it be used? How will it be interpreted? How long will it be stored? What are the safeguards or protection? Are there any repercussions if you lose my data? So these are questions that have to be asked. And if you're not comfortable, do not hand over your data. It's your personal information.
Yes.
And you have to trust. And it has to be an organization or an entity that you have trust in the first place for you to even entertain the conversation.
Very important.
Look at recently with WhatsApp. I've seen all of my friends now start up these Telegram accounts. Just since over the last month or so, you see everybody is on Telegram now. And it's just because WhatsApp released that, Facebook is going to start getting some of that data or whatever, and they're going to start, so these are key things for persons, people, your data is just so important now. Companies are monetizing persons' data so easily, so you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Yes, this is very important. Dale, what do you have to say to that user? Yeah,
so my take is this. Your skepticism is your first defense in any situation. I give you a scenario as well. Something I had watched on YouTube where a young lady was explaining a situation where someone called her posing to be a Bank of America agent, just trying to confirm the information, sent her a text message, all that stuff, right? Her skepticism said, hey, let me hang up from this call and call back and we continue the conversation, knowing that she'll be calling from the actual number. And the thing is, they were able to spoof that initial number, but once she's actually initiating it, then her confidence would actually rise in that situation. But when she actually called back and got handed off to the fraud department, there was no call initiated from Bank of America, But I said all that to say, you have to be very skeptical about persons asking you for data, whether that is an individual or through an application, or even an application that's asking to use your microphone when it's just actually doing something like taking a photo. Why would you need access to a microphone to do that? But even in my own day-to-day interactions with sites, and I mean, this is just my personal habit. Like if I'm doing even a payment through a website, I'm looking for certain things like the lock to make sure it's encrypted, who actually owns the certificate. I don't expect every average person to do that. This is just my pretty much walkthrough to build my own confidence as well, making sure that if I got to the site, I actually got through the site through either me entering it or something that was actually the correct link, and right. All these things come through just overall training, to spot misspellings in domains, might be a few things that are off or so on, and I think those things you gather over time. I think one of the things right now is that the public is getting more aware of these things, which is good, but definitely ask questions, ask yourself questions, be more skeptical.
All right, O'Shane.
All right, so I'm going to tackle the question from a technical point, especially from mobile security. So what I tend to recommend, like even my family, friends, to do whenever you install an app, it's asking you to use data. Not everyone does this, but I do recommend to check the permission. All of the permissions that it's using, sometimes it's like their GPS location. Sometimes it is audio. And there are even apps that basically can log your call history and send it off to their server. So therefore, definitely, like everyone pointed out, be skeptical about the permissions that they're asking for, and be more aware about, like, for example, their privacy statements. Not saying that you should definitely go and read that bulk of a text, but
If you have the time.
yeah, if you have time, sure. But it all boils down. At the end of the day, it's your data. It's you want to build confidence with the devices that you use. Okay, a bike is passing. Hold on. Okay, as someone said back in days, there's two type of security. When it comes on to application, security by obscurity, meaning that something is secured but unsecured. No, it's unsecured because no one knows that it's unsecured. And that's something you need to be aware of. There are websites that you probably upload your resume to, and you have your number or so forth on your resume. And then when you take a look, like open up that resume in the browser, you realize that, oh, it opened, you're logged in, but you copy that link to someone else, and that next person gets it. They realize that, oh, you realize that that person is not logged in, yet they can see your resume. So these are stuff that be curious about, find out what permissions, how they're anchoring your data, and where your data is going. And the beauty about the whole Data Protection Act and GDPR is that you can now request all of your data, or they delete your data, or they state exactly what they're doing with your data. But of course, not every application and every country is practicing it, but it's definitely something that we're moving rapidly towards. But at the same time, and I'll pose this question, if you don't mind, to everyone, is what can we do to help the general public to be more aware, to ask these questions and know when a site is secured? It's hard to know, but when a site is secured or not, and when they should trust it. So that's something we can also give pointers on.
Okay, Michael, what would you say to that user?
So it's a tricky one, right? Given that we're in 2021 and we're talking about data exchange between user and an entity. So don't have a mobile phone, don't have a laptop, don't have any digital presence at all. I think given the government our data is possibly the least concern, because we've already given our data to all the social media sites. We have already given our data to all the banks, and we have already given our data to all the utility companies, which we don't know what they're doing with it currently. We have never actually asked those questions, right? Again, what Dale and Stephen mentioned, and Shane, right? Be skeptical. We are in the technology field, so there are certain things that by nature will automatically do. We'll check to make sure a site is secure. But from the layman's perspective, right? Read those privacy statements. Be sure, right? See confirmation where necessary. But you know, I don't think we can not give our data this day and age, right? Our phones are listening to us, our TVs are listening to us, our refrigerators are listening to us, right? Everyone's got a Netflix account, right? And we are exchanging all our bank information, our identity information, you know, our personal information. And currently, you know, the breaches happen. They happen to the banks, they happen to the utility companies, but we don't hear about them. Yeah. You know, I think we're in a very fortunate position at this time that the jam COVID situation, we are aware of it. You know, and unfortunately, that is where we are. You know, the reality is that we're too far down the line, right? to say, okay, let's not give the data. We need to find a way to educate ourselves, right? Educate the people around us to understand what to look out for, right? And read those privacy statements, right? And especially around data sharing. You know, Stephen mentioned a whole raft of how the data is stored, collected, etc., etc. But sharing of that data. Currently, our data is shared all over the place. Well, if you know that, okay, you look at a TV inside your house and you point your phone to a TV, all of a sudden you start seeing the TV advert showing up when you go online, right? Or you talk about a game, you talk about a new PS5, you're just having a conversation and PS5 starts showing up in the adverts list, right? No, you didn't give any consent for that. Or possibly you did and you actually don't know. So it's reading those privacy statements, you know, location tracking again. You want to make sure that they're only enabled for applications that they should be enabled for. And also access to microphones and cameras, because you don't know who is in your phone actually watching you. As Stephen said, you know, those cloud data centers are possibly more secure, but physically you can't get to them, but virtually you can, right? And that is where we are.
I have one tip, one final tip for everybody. Pretty much use a password manager. Have a separate password for every single site. A long, nice, complicated one that you yourself can't remember, but you can remember that one password to get into your application and just log in.
All right, thank you so much. So essentially what you guys are saying to that person giving their information to an organization, be curious, ask questions, follow your gut, and read the fine print. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really hope that, you know, this helped to shed some light as to what happened and what we need to do as a country moving forward to ensure that users' information are safe when we're building these applications, and us users also know where the information is going, how it's being stored, and what security measures are being put in place to ensure that there are no breaches. All right, thank you so much, gentlemen, and take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's right.